All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We want to welcome you back to part 2 of our Digital Equity in Times of Crisis webinar, hosted by our ISTE Digital Equity PLN. Today, our focus is going to be on student and parent partnerships. If you are live tweeting, we would like to remind you to tag DigEquityPLN and use the hashtag ISTEDPLN. Please remember to change the chat drop-down options to all panelists and attendees so all questions and comments can be seen and shared with everyone tuning in. I am one of your moderators tonight. I'm Patricia Brown. Also joining me in moderating this webinar is Nicole Howard. You read it, Nicole.
Oh, I didn't know you wanted me to talk yet. I'm sorry. Hello, everyone. I'm Nicole Howard. I am an assistant professor at the University of Redlands in their Department of Teaching and Learning. I'm glad that we have this space today. And as you probably saw us share that we want to talk about more than devices. And so I'm really looking forward to diving into this conversation with a great group of parent educators. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, I am very excited about this conversation. Our topic, as I mentioned, is on student and parent partnerships. And this school year has definitely not been one of our normal school years. It has been very, very different. So in our current crisis, it has been critical that we begin to talk about equity, specifically as it relates to student and parent partnerships. But before we even jump into our first question, we want to take a pause and just acknowledge what is going on right now, these times that we're living in. And I just wanted to even just reach out to the panelists and ask, how are you doing? Let's start with Karla. How are you doing right now?
I think I'm doing, like my grandma would say, I'm definitely feeling a lot of emotions right now, in addition to the added responsibility that comes with, my current role and my current job. So I am probably every emotion that you could think of. I am angry and devastated. I am also, though, hopeful as well. So that the actions that we're seeing right now will make a positive change within our country and our communities.
Definitely. Bettina, how are you doing?
Pretty similar to Karla, hanging in there. I think it's just a time, right? It's a time for all of us. I think where we need to examine what it is that we're doing and how we're challenging anti-Blackness and racism in our society. And we see the consequences of it when we are not actively working to be anti-racist. And so this has been a very heavy last few days. And, I think as parent educators, as we all are, it's, there's that extra, right, of being both in this position of being an educator, but then also being in this position of being a parent and thinking about the world that you are sending your own kids into. And I do the work of teacher education. That's kind of where my field is. And so, also like, how are we preparing teachers? Teacher education is a very white field. Like, how are we preparing our teachers to challenge these deficit ideologies that they might have towards students and bring in equity and access? So I'm glad to be here today.
Thank you. We're glad to have you. Brian.
I'm actually very, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm actually pretty excited to, one, be here. But as my mom says, she calls me often, over these past couple of days because she knows I'm itching to get out there and do something, about what's going on. I feel as a father, especially of boys, the unique responsibility, to be, a voice, that's actively and continuously engaged in conversations to eradicate the ignorance that's out there. And, not necessarily only for the sake of myself, but I need to model for them, what it looks like, to advocate for what's right and to call out what's wrong. They're getting older. I'm fearful. My son just got is getting his driver's license, so to have that talk about what happens if you were pulled over, by the policeman it hurts, because that's a more difficult conversation than having the talk, for a young man, because it shouldn't be that way, but it's our reality, and I need that to not be so.
Agreed. Janelle, how you doing?
Well, right now I am processing right now. I have so many feelings about so many things that I can't fully even give it an answer. Same as Karla, I'm feeling everything. I'm just trying to put these feelings in the right place while at the same time having to explain to my young children what's going on, because as parents, we want to shield them from the craziness of the world, but because of the technology that they have access to, I can't do that. And I think for the first time yesterday, I felt helpless because I wasn't prepared to tell them what's going on and do the best that I can to control that narrative and make sure that they see that in the world there is still good and that there is still hope for better, without them thinking all of these people are bad versus all these people are good. It's a lot. It's a lot to process. I'm processing it for myself and just trying to make sure I am telling my own children what's going on the best way that I can.
Yeah. Wes, how's it going? Out in Cali. You're muted, by the way.
Did I successfully unmute?
You're good now.
That's good. It's just a sign. I should just be quiet. Yeah. My sister lives in Santa Monica, and she lives in a building above a bank that was broken into. She's in a wheelchair. We were on the phone for hours going, do you stay? Do you go? And I'm looking at all these live streams trying to tell her where things were happening around her. And so the awareness of people's mobility, access to technology. She had a phone. Thank goodness we were able to stay in touch. But yeah, I'll just say still processing. I mean, there's so much that's going on, and we try to do the best we can. I think one of the things, my wife and I, even since the quarantine, we have gone at each other when we're on the same team, but we're in proximity in different ways, and she's not going to work, but she's still trying to reach out and help her students. And then you realize this is not about you or me. And we're getting at each other in a negative way when we're on the same team. So I just think the awareness that we're experiencing a lot of emotions and just allow time and space to process them. And so I just want to say thank you, because I think this time and this space is part of that, even though it's kind of outside of all of our regular things we do. Just to get together and ask each other how we're doing is helpful, because nobody asked me that today.
Yeah.
To that end, Patricia, how are you doing?
I was just gonna say, I'm like everybody else. I'm just trying to figure things out. And most of you probably know, I live in Ferguson, Missouri, and 4 years ago. I don't even know how long ago it was now. My kids were a lot smaller. And so when things were happening around us, it was easier to kind of not be able to shield them from things, and to be able to not, share or not get them all involved in it. But now my teenagers are on TikTok. And so when we're talking about things, I saw it on TikTok, Mom. Or, I saw this is on the news, or why are they doing it? So it's like the conversation is so different. And I'm like you, Janelle, I don't even know how to explain a lot of what's going on. So on top of me dealing with my own, just frustrations and emotions, and dealing with being a mom and a wife of, all these males, Black males in my home, you can't help but constantly feel like when they leave the house, are they going to come back? It's just, it brings you, even when you feel like you're okay, and then something just triggers that, and it kind of just changes your whole feeling. So I'm all over the place right now. I'm okay at this moment. I'm glad we're here together and we're having this conversation, but it's definitely tough. So how are you doing?
No, thank you for asking. I feel the same way. I'm processing, but then I'm also in plan mode, and you all know me. That's the nature of who I am. And so I'm thinking about, what do I do next? And I'm also watching to see what those around me are doing next as well. So that's helping to inform, who is in the circle closest to me. When I was raised, we got to give honor to our, people before us, our family. I was raised that you approach relationships in this concentric circle type fashion, where you keep the people close to you who got you, who will pull up, show up, and then you start to go and you watch those others, and you build your circle based upon things of that nature. And so as I do that, I'm also thinking about, how do I teach my 9-year-old how to do that? And then I have a 21-year-old too. So I'm thinking, as she calls me and asks, or doesn't even ask, calls me and tells me she's thinking about protesting, I'm processing, how do I have that conversation with her about being careful in a different way, right? Because we all will show up differently. Some will protest, some will write, some will process, and some will plan and respond in other ways. And so I think I'm in plan mode for myself. And then I'm also trying to be supportive in supporting those around me who are going through this too.
Yeah, I think just having an opportunity to have people to check in with, I think it's so helpful. Have those safe spaces, have those people that you can call upon, check in with, to making sure just that you're okay, and I think we're all processing, and because it's still not even fresh, it's just now. It's like everything is now. You don't know from day to day, minute to minute what's going on. It's really just a constant processing. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine what our students are dealing with, what our parents, and most of us are parents on this panel, but just thinking about, we went from having an environment where we were abruptly, the school year kind of went digital. And now we're in a situation where things are, we're dealing with unrest. We're dealing with a whole lot of things going on. So that being said, our original question was just talking about the strategies your district has been using to make connections with the parents during this remote learning time. But I'll add even that extra layer of what's happening now. How can we make those connections with our parents and our students? Like, what are some things that we can do, or maybe some things that your districts are doing, maybe some ideas that you have, because we're all about solutions when we have our webinars, and not just talking about the problems, but coming up with some strategies and things that people can walk away with. Anybody?
And I would just add, as we dive into that, we took care of us first in this space, and we checked in to see how everyone was doing personally. So if our panelists wouldn't mind giving a professional introduction so that our attendees do know your context as you respond to this question, just tell us, you know, where you're from and what your role is at your organization or institution as you answer.
Janelle? You were the only one unmuted at first, so I was like, she must want to talk.
Oh, my Lord. Well, okay, I'll go first. Well, my name is Janelle Johnson. I am a program specialist, K-12 math and science, and tech mentor in Atlanta, Georgia. As I'm thinking of that question, just reflecting, first, I would just want to say our teachers, they work hard anyway, but woo, they work hard and put in positions that they weren't prepared for, but just watching our teachers, at least from the outside looking in, watching them evolve from, I don't use these particular tools to now I have to, and they're doing it quick. And I appreciate that. But I think I want to take it a step further. I understand for most of us, we're on summer break now, and these teachers, they need that break. They need that time to disconnect, but this is also an opportunity for community building. I'm a little conflicted on how I'm going to say this, but I feel as an educator, still check on your babies. We always say that these are our forever babies. I get it, it's summer break. If your class dojo is still on, if your teams is still on with your current roster, just do a quick check-in, see how they're doing. See how parents are doing, because I guarantee they appreciate someone checking on them, just like what we just did. No one has asked me that, and I appreciate it. And just wondering how that would be so impactful if we were doing that with our parents and with our students. So that's something that I think we could try to continue to do with regards to taking care of ourselves and our mental stability.
Definitely. Bettina, any thoughts?
Yeah, you know, so I am the director of teacher education and professor at the University of Laverne, which is in Southern California. And so I kind of approach this from the teacher ed side and am thinking about the ways that I have seen my student teachers and also the teachers I am still networked with, connect with their parents and students. And I think there's a lot of like this necessity for teachers to be even more proactive. And like Janelle, like, I think I really feel for our teachers, many of whom are parents themselves, who are just burnt out, right? Like they're tired because they're trying to manage their own children. I'm managing my 2 children at home and trying to figure out stuff, but then there's such a need to be proactive, right? And so like I've been trying to help my student teachers, like just remember to use that Remind app, remember to like reach out via email. Remember, like any contact is better than no contact, right? And even if you think like you're not getting the responses or you're not getting the stuff, it still may mean something that you don't know, right? And I think like when, you know, that's our work as teachers, right? Like you never know what little thing is going to make a difference. And you never know which Remind text is going to be the one that like the student really needed at that moment, or which email or which check-in. And I think what Janelle said is really important. It's like, I've been emphasizing to my student teachers and also to the teachers I know, like we have to remember our students and our parents' humanity, because if we can't connect with their humanity, then like our academics, like right now, like we have to prioritize, right? And in Maslow's hierarchy, like we gotta prioritize their safety and their security, and like, do they have food, right? Do they have, like, before we're thinking about, you know, did you get that assignment in, right? And so I think like, you know, we're ISTE, right? We have tools, right? And technology has given us some affordances, different apps, different ways to connect. But I think it's really important to remember that we're connecting with people, right? And now we are connecting with people in their homes and around their siblings and in these families. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to add. Thanks, Janelle, for starting that off.
Thank you. Wes, anything you want to add? You're muted again.
You know, it just builds the suspense. Yeah, I just appreciate what everybody's saying. I think one of the things my wife does in her Google Classroom, she teaches English at a continuation high school, and she puts a poll up every day. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me how you're doing. You know, and it's like great, good, good considering, not so good, bad. And her students, I mean, they tell her, thank you for asking. Thank you. I mean, and it's not an assignment. And some of them, it's the only work they do. They'll come in and tell her how they're feeling. And that's a lifeline. That's a lifeline for our students as it is for us. And so it's a really simple thing, and it could easily be overlooked. I mean, her students say nobody else is asking that question. And so it's because it's simple and because it's overlooked, it's all the more important because it communicates a weight of caring, that somebody took the time to do something that other people are overlooking. And for good reason, there's a lot going on, but it just reemphasizes the humanity of our students. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as educators, I appreciate those who have just sent me a text or inboxed me on Twitter or Facebook, just checking in. You know, this is the time when you really kind of see like who has your back, you know, or even not even have your back, but who, you know, is thinking outside of themselves and thinking about others. And I think that's what's important right now. Karla, Brian, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that, well, first of all, I'm Brian Romero Smith. I am the North Texas Territory Manager for Nearpod and Vocabulary. These times actually really made me miss the classroom a little. But I had the unique privilege of, you know, working with, you know, teachers all over, principals all over, district administrators all over, in regards to how do we respond, you know, to what's going on. And I immediately put on my teacher and my administrative hat, you know, when it comes to these type of conversations. And what I would tell them is first start with, you know, making sure that you take care of the whole child. You know, you meet them first, but then the conversation would continually transition to making sure you're checking on the parents too. The parents are taking on a brand new role that they were not prepared for. You know, not only do they have to deal with, you know, am I still going to be able to provide? Is my job available? You know, because of being furloughed or whatever the case may be. Now I have to sit and help my child through a subject area that I haven't seen in ages. You know, I don't know how to teach this. You know, so I got the chance to talk to teachers and administrators about how do you work with your parents as partners, you know, and to simplify things and minimize the multi-tab experience, things of that, you know, that nature. Keep them in one place to where you can actually concentrate on what it is that your child is learning, but then give them a brand new opportunity to connect with their child. You know, so it was a lot of, you know, let's do some activities where we can play, you know, not a ton of worksheets. Even if you're going to use our platform to do so, let me introduce you to how you can actually provide opportunities for the parents and the children to play together, reconnect with one another so the parent can meet their child where they are. And then everything else is solid when it comes to a partnership between teacher and parent. And that's kind of how I use my time. A lot of webinars, a lot of demos, a lot of conversations.
Definitely. Karla?
So I'm Karla Jefferson, and I am an instructional technology coordinator for a school district in South Carolina. I am also the parent of a child that attends that very same school district. And so in my role, as we rolled out ways that we would support those communications, and there are some things that most of these things were already in place. So we already did what we call School Connects, calls, texts, and emails that can come directly from the district or that can come from schools. We use Remind already as a means of communicating with parents. And then we also, so I spend a lot of time at the beginning of the school year talking to beginner teachers, really like social media do's and don'ts. And so like, and I know our public information officer is coming from a security standpoint. So she's like, don't use social media, don't, connect with students that way. And so we talked about ways that we could do that in a way that is safe. So what we encourage teachers to do is what I did when I was in the classroom, and I spent 14 years in middle school, is I created a Facebook account just for my parents and for my students that I'm still friends with them. And then as they graduate from high school, they can transition over to like my real account. But having those types of spaces where you can touch base with parents, like in the beginning, parents would just, if the child forgot their homework, they would take a picture of it and upload it to Facebook Messenger so I could have it. But creating those avenues, or in safe places where they can kind of share and see inside, like our classrooms. And right now our classrooms are home. I think that's super important. As we left out, we also added Zoom we started initially with really focusing on Zoom for our students with disabilities. And so those teachers checked in on a regular basis with their students, just, trying to see how they were doing. And then we had teachers, since everybody had access to it, they began to use it as well. And for instruction, but one of the things that we talked about is kind of some of the same things that have been shared here. The first 5 minutes, kids are away from each other. They're away from their teachers that they adore. They are away from, their friends. And so give them some time at the beginning of each session and the end of each session to just talk about how they're feeling. And, is there anything that they want to share that doesn't have anything to do with like content? Like, how do we, continue to build like those types of relationships, things that we would talk about with students in the hallway, or, at recess or at lunch. How can we continue those conversations so that we can better understand the types of, situations that our students are dealing with? We are going to continue our feeding program over the summer, which we normally do anyway. And so we have encouraged teachers, to continue to try to reach out as best they can. For parents, even on the technical side, and I shared this earlier, we created a helpline for parents and students to call just for support. And so in the beginning, when we first started, a lot of it was like, let's just kind of talk parents off the ledge because all of this is new. And so like parents are like, I'm ready to take this iPad back up to the school right now. And it's like, hold up, mama, let me get you straight, or in some cases, like with my child who was with her grandma, she was with my mom because I was still working. And so teachers also just kind of went above and beyond with how can, like if this is our class time, but I have a child that still needs additional support, my mom would say, go on and text your teacher on that remind, see when you can get that one-on-one session. So like things that they didn't necessarily have to do, but it just built a better relationship between the home and the parent that may not have even, happened before. Some of my resource teachers sat in on regular ed sessions in addition to their sessions that they did with their students, and then also had individual student sessions in the evenings with kids and parents. So, it is like Janelle, and I think most of us have said, we have grown exponentially during this time. And so just to kind of continue to figure out that how can we take some things that, with us being so far apart from each other, how can we incorporate them even in this situation? Because at the end of the day, that SEL comes first. If that child doesn't feel like you care about them, or that parent feels like you don't, have any patience, or that you're not, that's going to limit how far that child is going to go, even outside of the spaces that we are now.
Yeah. Karla, you covered so many different layers, from the academic part to the district level to just that connection. And I think it was great that you all had a lot of those things in place already. And I think that just helped you guys transition even more as a district. And we just got to think outside the box as it relates to connecting with our kids at this point. I mean, I've seen a lot of people doing the Bitmoji classrooms and the characters and making TikToks for the kids. I mean, you just have to meet the families and the kids where they are because times are different. So I appreciate all of those different strategies you guys shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say one thing that you guys have all hit on, you know, my work is as an educator, but also a researcher. And in the research that I've done around parent involvement, one of the things that we see in the policy documents, it's about finding ways to get parents to actually physically come to campuses. And we don't often see how we're supporting parents in engaging with conversations with their own children, and maybe even how we are engaging in conversations, right? Not just, I'm gonna have donuts and coffee, parents stop by during your work hours to the campus, right? But how are we extending or going beyond that? And so it kind of leads to this next question, because you all are parent educators, and our first question was really about, you know, what are you doing at home that might extend the learning beyond what's being offered by your districts right now? But I would add on to that, we also want to hear from you. How are you addressing those difficult questions that are coming from your kids about how do they address anti-Black, anti-Asian actions that they're seeing on the news right now? How are you having those difficult conversations? How are you preparing them to address things? And if you have young children, you know, what literature or what resources are you sharing with your own children that we might share with our community here to guide them as parent educators too? Let's start with, well, how about, is there anyone ready to jump in on that one? Okay, all right.
So this is my question. Although I told Nicole when she asked me, she's like, we're talking about parents and being a parent educator. And I'm like, I really hope no one's expecting me to be the tiger mom, because I'm like the anti-tiger mom, like with my own children, like we're just chilling at home. And like, it is all about the SEL, right? I have a new 5-year-old. You can see her picture in the background there. And a 12-year, well, oh my gosh, he's not 12, he's 14. I just called him 12, he's 14. This is, okay, welcome to the pandemic. So I have a 5-year-old and a 14-year-old at home. And so, you know, with the 5-year-old, we're just all, this has opened my eyes, like as a parent, because my 14-year-old has been managing his school day while helping us manage our 5-year-old, while my husband and I are trying to work in the same space, right? And I think that's like the realities of dealing with parenting while also trying to be an educator, right? And trying to do like your own work and manage on those sides. But your question specifically on like, how are we dealing with kind of all of the anti-Asian and anti-Black racism that has come up. So my older children are African-American, they're adopted, they're outside of our home now, they're adults, they're 30. But our family like has always been a place where we address racism directly, right? Because it affects people in our family, right? Like it affects like my younger children's older sisters. It affects us, like when we walk out and when we are afraid to leave our homes, right? And so we've always been people who believe that even if they're like little, like we're gonna have those conversations, and then they'll ask us about those conversations, and then we'll explain it to them in ways that we can. And we've had a lot of, like even from board books, right? Like A is for activist, right? Anti-racist baby just came out, right? So there's like little kid, like board books, right? And then there's older books. This book is Anti-Racism, stamped, right? The Jason Reynolds remix of Ibram Kendi's Stamped from the Beginning, right? So there are great resources out there to address anti-Black, anti-Asian racism, anti-racism in general. But it's also being willing to have those conversations and then being that space, because a lot of my students who are teacher candidates don't know how to have that conversation and are afraid to have that conversation because it's all, you know, it's a difficult political situation, like not like country politics, but like when you're not a teacher, right? And so And so it's like, how do we navigate those conversations in family and then in schools? And I've been super bummed because I've had to do a lot of supplementing. I'm a English language arts person, and my child has never read anything that's reflective of him or anybody in our family. Like everything he's read is white authors, like reflecting on like white experiences. And so the one thing that's been great about this time is actually like, or times when he's not assigned work, he's assigned free reading, is that mama is there to be like, and you should read this book, and you should read this book, because he's not getting it in the curriculum. And so I think having those resources available for parents and students, and like drawing on their knowledge and what's happening in the community, and teaching people to read the world and not just the word, and teaching them critical media literacy, right? Like, don't believe everything you're seeing on social media, because that's not always the best way to see your sources. Even with the protests, right? Like, which protests are legit by organizers and which ones are like shady, right? Like they have some red flags, and you know. So I'm sorry, I'm rambling now. I'm going to
it's
open
okay.
it up for other
It's
people.
okay.
My bad, everybody.
No, it's okay. It's funny because we moved some questions around, and so I had a feeling when I moved this one and added a layer to it that you might be ready to jump in. Those of you who don't follow our panelists on Twitter, you might want to check them out, because each of them over this time period have sent out resources along the lines of what we're talking about now. And so if you want to hear more from them, follow them, definitely check out what they're sharing. And I think Brian is unmuted, so I want to see if he's ready to jump in to answer this question too.
Yes, absolutely. It has been a little difficult. So what I've tried to share is what I've been searching for myself, for my own conversations at home. It's always been important that my wife and I, we separate, work, from our conversations at the dinner table, so that we can get to know each other on a different level. We don't bring our burdens upon them. But this was unavoidable. So, I have 4 kids. I have one at every level: a collegiate student, high school, middle school, and elementary kid. And what they're exposed to is different for each one of them. So as a father, I have to be open, to the different lenses that they are looking at these situations from. My collegiate student, my oldest, my daughter, she is, she is a rebel, so she's fired up, with all the protests that's going on, but she's also looking at, very critically what's happening in the conversations on social media. And I'm proud of her, because she's become bold enough to ask those questions, to look at the validity of what's actually being said. So that media literacy has become key with her. My son, who is he loves Instagram, but he also loves following what the sports figures are saying about, these particular issues. So we're able to have those easy conversation about certain figures. The Last Dance, was just played, for, those consecutive weeks, and it created an opportunity for the two of us to really bond around athletics. But then when this took place, and to see those same figures actually utilize their platform to advocate for change, put a different spin on what he's accustomed to seeing, in those particular arenas. So I'm proud that he's actually paying attention, but it gives us an opportunity to elevate those conversations, because he has a responsibility as a high school student, as a leader in several organizations, to have a voice, and then to speak for the voiceless. So he's learning that through watching his heroes, so to speak, in the sports world, be advocates as well. My younger two, it's a little difficult. I'm a man of faith, so I ensure that my approach is, has a biblical base, to it, especially with them. So we really look at who they watch on YouTube. They love to watch other people stream video games and provide tutorials. So we have had the conversation about diversifying, who you're watching, what kind of content that you're seeing and you're learning from, and who are you learning it from. You know, how is it relevant to the way that you approach the particular game? So we just had that conversation earlier today with my youngest, who will be turning 10 next month, because she loves crafts. She loves to watch people make crafts. So she's in this process of dolls. So she's asking me, you know, for different type of dolls. And, you know, I'm asking her, so why is it that you want different type of dolls? Because I'll be honest with you, I just bought her black dolls, you know, just to be truthful. You know, it was very, very hard for me to do anything else. But she began to talk to me about hair texture, you know, as she's doing her doll's hair. So she's becoming aware, you know, of what is really happening out here through the eyes of Barbie, so to speak. You know, so I'm taking that opportunity to further those conversations with her. But the reality is you have to differentiate those conversations for each child. You know, each child, like I said, is going to see it through a different lens. And as a parent, it's important that you're mindful of that. So when you're packaging your statements or your conversations, you're giving it to them in a way that's palatable for them, so they can digest it and then learn from it.
That's good stuff. Janelle, Karla, you guys are both unmuted. Either of you ready to jump in on this one too?
Sure, I'll jump in. So I want to say the first thing, before I can touch on how we're supporting my kids, I want to first invite you into our household for a moment. My husband and I, we have to be a united front. And I say that to say my husband is biracial. He's black and white. I'm African American. And I also add another layer. We also have my mom who sold her house and just moved in with us. So now we have 3 generations in this house. And my mom has stories for days. She graduated from high school in 1980, and she can tell you stories about a cross being burnt at her prom. And so she has a lot of feelings, but we, of the 3 of us, we have to ensure that we're all on the same page, that we're a united front on what we're going to say to our kids. So you have those avenues. And then to your point, Brian, the different avenues on social media that they're looking at. My oldest daughter is a power tumbler. She spends a lot of time on TikTok. She spends a lot of time on Instagram. She has her friends that she misses that may be, you know, feeding her information. So being in tune with what they're saying, what they're learning, what they're hearing, and being able to have those conversations. And another thing, because my kids are African American, you know, I have to teach them to stand in your truth. You are who you are. You are royalty. Don't let anyone tell you different. And, you know, while it's amazing, there are a lot of anti-racist books out there. My hopes, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm reaching out to anyone, are there books that will prepare a Black child about racism? Because right now, all I have is, hey, stand in your truth, be respectful. You are who you are, and no one can take that away from you. I don't care what they call you. So you have to prepare them for the mental battle that they're going to face, even if you don't know whether they're going to face it or not. So, you know, that's all I have.
That's good. And one thing I would just throw out, but Karla, I still want to hear from you, but I want to throw this out there that as we share these resources, we're not looking for a rubric to assess their knowledge on these anti-racist books, please. I know we have a history of doing this, of taking things that are meant to support the development of our youth, and some of it doesn't need a rubric, right? Some of it just, we need it to support and to do what it does. And so we're talking about, you know, from a parent's perspective, but also if you hear us through an educator's perspective as well, these are resources and books we'd like to see in our own students' classrooms in the future. Karla, you want to jump in before?
Yeah, I'll be super short. I have a 15-year-old daughter who is on the autism spectrum. So life for her is very innocent. And so we, you know, I think for me and my husband, our standpoint is to try to, I mean, it's not going to be, you know, it's not going to be easy. So we do try to protect her a lot from some of the things that she may experience. She's also a very lucky child because she has never been in a situation where it is not all about her, not once in school. it's all about her all the time. And so eventually we know that's going to run out. So also to kind of prepare her for that, like, you're not going to be the center of attention, you know, all the time. But I think about what Bettina says. And so what we spend a lot of time, and again, what Brian said, is just kind of building up her confidence in being a Black, you know, a Black girl, a Black woman. So like Brian said, we, you know, bought her, you know, Black dolls, and she would say, we were in the middle of Walmart one time, and she said, "You want me to have a Black doll because I'm Black?" And I said, "But yes, but I also want you to see the beauty in what you look like." And so also like reading books by Black authors. Like right now we've started reading The Skin I'm In by Sharon G. Flake, where, you know, a child is, she's consistently ridiculed because of, you know, the darkness of her skin, and how she learns to find beauty in that and to stand up for herself. So I think, you know, in also sharing those types of situations, you know, sharing what's going on right now, how do I build her up so that kind of, you know, no matter what comes her way, she's still confident in who she is, you know, in whatever situation. So yeah, I think for us, that's kind of the way we started, because there's such an innocence to her that she, like, nobody has ever even not been nice to her, I don't think, you know. So how do we continue to try to protect her, but help her to understand or build her up so that when it does happen, she's prepared.
Yes, thank you all for sharing. We're ready for our next question, so I'm going to pass back over to Patricia.
Yeah, that was such great knowledge, and I'm just reflecting on myself as a parent and my 5 boys, and like you, Brian, they're in different levels, college, and then I have my 8th graders that think they're in high school, but they're not quite in high school yet, but they're like in that middle stage. And so those are the tough ones, those 12, almost 13-year-old boys that I have, just trying to get them to, you know, love themselves and who they are as young Black males, but also prepare them for what they are going to face in society. And so, again, I think Janelle mentioned it earlier about just talking about how there is good in the world, there are good people, and you cannot judge everyone, you know, as a whole group, but you have to individually look at people for who they are. And then you have that other side where you also want to make sure your kids are prepared for when those things come to them, and be able to handle it and not be devastated when someone they thought that was their good friend suddenly is different when they get to high school. So I think that is a challenge that we all face, and it's very difficult. So for me, and I think everybody on this panel, as a parent, we also are balancing our work life. Some of us have supports where we can send our children different places. Some of us have our computers, our kids set up in a classroom, a home classroom where they have everything all set up. Some of us have these fancy studios where they have their kids on all these different places. But just, you know, how are you guys managing to be able to balance that work life, be able to balance giving your own personal children what they need, as well as being able to, all of you all have kind of roles where you're supporting other educators. So how does that work? Because I'm still trying to figure that out myself. And I feel like it's at any given time, I'm failing at one of them. So anybody want to jump in? Janelle?
I'll be quick, but I really wanted to answer this question. This was more reflective. I think being in this space, it showed that this is a realness. You know, when we were at work, you were able to compartmentalize, okay, over here I'm educator, but when I get home, I'm parent. For the first time, it's okay to be both. Like, I could be on a Zoom call in PLCs with teachers, and then one of my kids pops in. It's at a point now where they're like, "Hi, Christian. Hi, Chloe," because I am both. They need me. I have a job to do, and I can't apologize for who I am. And I think that's my biggest recommendation of how to balance it. Just, you know, it is what it is. I am who I am, and you're going to see who you're going to see. So That's where it is.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
I've been in a role, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Director of Innovation, and we got access to the community cable channel when the schools closed. And so my team started to produce instructional content for cable for students who didn't have access to the internet. That was the thinking. So therefore, I'm going into the studio every day because I'm essential and essential services. And so I found it that my wife and I had to, when I got home, we would just go on like a 4-mile walk or a 2-mile walk, and we would just kind of unplug, put the phones down, and just be with each other and get out and move. And that just, it's hard. She's at home in this quarantine situation. I'm going to work kind of like normal, but 3 times more work than usual. And then I come home and it takes 45 minutes for us to open up to each other and to kind of get the communication going, because it's just an unusual high pressure situation. So just simple advice, take walks together and just make time for it and do it every day and just be out there for, go for miles.
Yeah, I'm impressed with this when you said 4 miles, I was like, whoa.
Well, we didn't
like around the block or a couple times.
we did not start at 4. We started at 1. Yeah. Okay. But it gets to the point where a 4-mile walk feels like that's the right amount of time. It's 90 minutes. We're not going fast. It's good. Yeah. Yeah. We did not start at 4.
90 minutes? Well, that's good for 4 miles, I guess, right? That's really good for some of us.
Yeah. We tried the family walks, but I said we tried the family walks, and I try to run a 5K each day, and so I took them on my route. They weren't having that the next day, so the family walks are super short. But I was going to jump in and say that the first thing that I had to do, I already work from home, so it was an adjustment for me, but to have my college student home, because they weren't going to let them back after spring break, and then having the other 3 home, and then my wife buy all this new furniture because she moved into my office, was a huge adjustment. But the first thing I did actually was I had to realize that my kids are going to be on their devices much more than I allow at home. So first thing I did was I adjusted their screen time. I control everybody's screen time, even including my college student. I control the screen time because I paid a bill, so I can do so. But one of the things that I do with my kids is I have conversations with them about how they use their devices. We used to call the screen time Saturday. So when we were consistent every Saturday morning before we got moving, they'll put their screen on the TV. So we'll all sit in the family room, and so they use AirPlay to put it up on the TV, and I'll just let them talk about how they use their devices, how much time they spent in each little category, because an iPhone will allow you to see the categories of the applications that you actually have, how much time they use on productivity. So as when schoolwork came in, I had to let them use it a little bit more, but I wanted them to talk to me about how they are balancing how much time they're using this device for school versus entertainment. And many of those conversations, my wife and I, we just sit and listen. And then at the end, we show our own devices, to show them how much we actually use our devices and what we use our devices for. What I was trying to get with this was get them to self-regulate. Technology is a must-have, seems like right now in our current space, but, too much is not, it's not good. We need to get out and walk. We need to connect with one another. We don't do devices at dinner time. So you don't bring your phone to the table, or you just don't come and eat if that's the case. But I want you to also manage how much you're using the devices and really think about how it is impacting your life, the way you think, the way you do work, the way you communicate with one another and with your friends, and then how you are influenced by how much you're actually using your device. So that was the first thing that we did and make those adjustments. The screen time was crazy, but it is what it is. But at least they are analyzing it and really synthesizing, their use. And that was important to me.
That's good stuff, Brian. I definitely am going to take that to heart. I have been working so hard and I would be so tired and go to sleep. And then I wake up in the morning and my kids, they had a party. They had pizza boxes everywhere. They're on their devices. They're TikToking videos, all kind of stuff. And I'm definitely going to put their screen time on their phones as of tonight. They're not going to like it, but that's what I'm going to do. Because that was just, this pandemic has just like all rules out of the window in a lot of aspects. You start off good and then it's like, okay, what else can happen right now? So definitely some great stuff in how we can balance our time with our students, our own children. Definitely. Nicole, any final things we want to wrap into?
Well, just to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I know Patricia may have final words. This was a great conversation. Continue to follow the conversation on the Slow Chat that's happening on Twitter at DigEquityPLN. I'll go ahead and share a slide that shows you where to go. But we appreciate Karla, Bettina, Brian, Janelle, West for joining us as panelists. Thank you, Matt and Sarah, for managing the chat for us. We appreciate you all too. And just, I'm still processing, y'all. Can you tell? I'm on slow-mo. I mean, there's so many thoughts going on in my head right now, but we really do appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Same here, just trying to process all the things. But I really felt like in this conversation that we had, we talked a lot about just making those personal connections. From even going with our students to our families, and just hearing how, even though this whole pandemic, the tension is going on in the world right now, what I heard from the panelists tonight was they use it as an opportunity to either reconnect with their families, be able to have some opportunities where they can have, deep conversations with their own children, make connections with their staff, keep those communications going on. I just feel like even though there's a lot going on, we got a lot of different emotions, a lot of different feelings, we're still processing things. I think our human nature is that we're still going to find a way to connect with one another. And I feel like that's what we're doing. And whatever way that works for you and your family, I think that's like the number one and most important thing you can do right now. Thank you everyone for attending our second equity webinar. Our next one is on teacher education, and that is happening on June the 8th. Same time, same place, so please join us. And
1 hour later, actually, sorry, y'all.
1
hour later, we switched it up just for that one. For that one.
1 hour later, so please join us. We would love to have you participate and be a part of it. And please continue the conversation on Twitter. We don't have to stop right now. We're going to stop our webinar, but we can continue the conversation on Twitter and our other spaces.